panel this evening as we await that live broadcast from the White House by President Joe Biden. First to you, Mr. Brahmachelani, sir, your reactions to the Pentagon chief saying the US is looking, for a way for this not to be a conflict, for a diplomatic solution to what's happening.
Well, the US cannot have it both ways. The US cannot be slapping more sanctions on Russia and still looking for a diplomatic way out. The fact that President Biden is going to be unveiling new sanctions on Russia, and this would be his third round of sanctions against Russia since taking office just a year and a month ago. In that short period, he's already slapped Russia twice with sanctions last year, and this would be the third round of sanctions. And that will only exacerbate matters. It will provide greater incentive to President Putin to go down the route of a confrontation with US and NATO. So I expect the sanctions to be a slippery slope. The sanctions will also be welcome news for China. For example, Germany's decision not to certify Nord Stream 2 pipeline actually will open up more gas supplies for China. What China is seeking to do, and we should bear that in mind because it's a very important strategy of China, which is to buy lots of oil and gas from Russia, as much as Russia can sell to China, so that China can build a safety net, that can withstand Western energy embargo or Western energy sanctions in the event China invades Taiwan. So building that safety net through greater access to Russian oil and gas is great news for China. But look at India. India has no direct stake in, and nor has it contributed in any way to the US-Russia conflict over Ukraine. But Indian economy is already taking a hit from this confrontation. The crisis has already raised India's energy import bill steeply. India is paying billions of dollars extra every week for importing oil and LNG. India is one of the world's largest energy importers. And just today, the oil prices and the gas prices have further jumped. Which means that, for example, oil is close to $100 a barrel, and even the LNG prices have shot up, which means that India's energy import bill in the coming days and weeks is likely to further increase. This is the cost India is already paying because of this confrontation over NATO forward policy and over the Russian massing of troops on the border of Ukraine. But there's also a further issue, if I could highlight, because this goes back to the discussion we were having earlier about India's stance on this crisis. Some have criticized India for adopting a measured neutral response. The fact is that such a response maximizes India's strategic leeway. But more importantly, the Americans, the Biden administration has not come out directly in India's support in the present border crisis that India is facing with China. China has massed nearly 200,000 troops along the Himalayan frontier with India. That's a much larger number of troops that have been deployed than the number of troops that Russia has deployed against Ukraine. But the Americans have not condemned the Chinese aggression. They have, in fact, the Biden administration has avoided using the term aggression to describe what's happening in the Himalayan region. They're calling it a conflict along the line of actual control. This is the terminology that is repeatedly being used by the US. And just a few days ago, when the State Department was asked about the India-China border tensions and the massing of Chinese troops along the border with India, it began by urging both sides to find a peaceful settlement. That provides a template for India's own response to the current confrontation between the US and Russia over Ukraine. India should be using the same template to call for a diplomatic solution.
Very, very interesting and detailed picture that you've given us, Mr. Chelani. I want to, just for a moment, point our viewers to these images that we're getting from the Delhi airport. A special Air India flight carrying around 242 passengers, Indian passengers from Ukraine, has just landed at Delhi's Indira Gandhi International Airport. And you're looking at images, of Indian passengers. We have pictures of them on flight as well. That'll be on your screens in just a moment. But these are live pictures coming in from the Indira Gandhi International Airport of Indian passengers who've just arrived back from Ukraine. Gaurav continues to be with me. Tejshri is at the Delhi airport. She will be live with me in just a moment. We've got pictures. I'm going to ask our producers to put those pictures on our screens as quickly as possible. Lovely pictures of passengers on that plane landing in Delhi just a moment ago. Here they are coming out, from the aircraft, out of the airport after landing from Ukraine. This comes on the back of advisories. Gaurav Sawant is with me. He's on the train from Kiev to Donetsk, the rebel areas of in eastern Ukraine. The first journalist who will be reporting from there, from India. Gaurav, images of the first batch of Indians coming in from that special flight, 242 of them. We've got these pictures on air. You had actually spoken to many of these people before they left Ukraine. What was their mood like? What did they tell you? We'll be playing out some of those voices. But Gaurav, you've met many of these people, and we can see pictures of them in the aircraft right now. That flight has just landed, Gaurav.
Shiv, a sense of relief, a great sense of relief that these people were finally heading home out of this uncertainty. They were extremely unnerved by the uncertainty and the violence that was taking place here, which is what they were telling me, and especially families. So some of the youngsters wanted to stay back. They wanted to continue to study, but they actually wanted their parents to feel reassured, and that is why they were going back. Also, the ticket prices, they've gone through the roof, Shiv. A return ticket to Ukraine usually is anything between 25 to 35, often 40,000. But off late, some of these tickets have been as high as 70 to 90,000 for a journey, and that is why this uncertainty prompted some of these youngsters to head back, especially now that classes are also being held online, so they could continue their studies in India. But they're hoping that the situation would improve in the next couple of months so that they can come back to Ukraine, finish their studies, and especially their practicals before their examination. And those fourth-year students who need to do their practicals before they can start practicing, first in Ukraine and then in India, Shiv.
Stay with me. All of my panelists stay with me. We're very privileged right now to be joined by Sofia Fedina. She's a member of parliament in the Ukrainian parliament. She joins us live right now from Kiev. Sofia, thank you very much for being with us here. I know it's a very, very sensitive time. Your first reactions, Sofia, on what President Putin has just said. We're all awaiting to hear what President Biden says in a few minutes from now. But your assessment, your analysis and reaction to what President Putin has said just a couple of hours ago.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the invitation, and thank you that you care about our country and what is going on here.
Care.
The first thing I would like to stress that Putin and the Moscow Federation, they are aggressors. And actually, nowadays, Putin terrorizes all the civilized and democratic world, telling that he is going to attack Ukrainians and sending his troops to Ukraine. That is inapplicable. And unfortunately, we here in Ukraine feel that he is not going to stop with the recognition of self-proclaimed fake republics. Unfortunately, they say that they recognize these republics in administrative borders. That automatically means that sooner or later they will start a big attack from Moscow Federation to widen the borders of the so-called fake republics. Nowadays, we have more than 147,000 of Moscow Federation troops around Ukraine, and now they brought the hard artillery, and for the last few days, they are shooting all over the front line, starting shooting from shelling our children in kindergarten and in the school. That he said yesterday and today, that means that he does not need these republics. What Putin and Moscow Federation need today is to deprive Ukraine of its right to be independent country. And as I've heard the shorted about Indians who came back to their country from Ukraine, we can see, and these people can confirm, that Putin and Moscow Federation, they are spreading fear, uncertainty, and they are ruining peace today in Ukraine, the country that just for the 8 years has to defend its right to be.
Okay, we have Sophia, we have a full panel of experts here. You're absolutely right when you say that India cares about what's happening in Ukraine, and India today, as India's #1 news network, definitely cares about Ukraine. I don't know if you know that our senior executive editor, Gaurav Sawant, he was in your city just a couple of hours ago. He's on a train right now, headed towards Donetsk and the rebel states in eastern Ukraine. He's going to be reporting from there. He's going to be live in just a moment. In just a moment, you're going to be able to hear his voice. You'll be able to speak to him. You'll be able to tell him what to expect when he goes and reaches there, because you're talking about the shelling that has taken place in other areas. But right now, Sophia, we've heard the Ukrainian president. We're awaiting Gaurav. He'll be with us in a moment. But Sophia, while we wait, the Ukrainian president has once again sent out a plea for more Western military hardware, because, as you said, that the expectation of a military attack has become much more real at this point of time. Is that right?
Yes, it is right. But I think what we need much more today, together with a weapon, with lethal weapon to defend ourselves, we need an air protection possibilities, a so-called defense umbrella that can give to us NATO and the European Union, because Ukrainians are really afraid that Putin can start attack from the air, and we know that their air forces are much stronger than air forces of Ukraine. And that air defense umbrella from the NATO and European Union, they might provide the possibility for Ukrainians to survive in case of harder attack. And also that will be a sign to Putin that please do not intervene to Ukraine, as we all together, we stand together to preserve peace, democracy, and independency of Ukraine. But also, we need to raise a question of the full-scale sanctions against Putin, his surrounding, and those people, members of Federation Council, who voted for the recognition of fake republics. I will state once again that this act of recognition, it was the hybrid type of invasion onto Ukrainian territory.
Okay, stay with me, Sophia. Our Foreign Affairs editor, Geeta Mohan, is also with me. She wants to ask you a question. We very much value your time. You're an elected representative in a country that faces, possible aggression. You're saying that it could be imminent. Geeta, go ahead. We have Sofia Fedina, a member of parliament from Ukraine. Incredible coverage tonight.
Well, Sophia, just the fact that when we see commitment from NATO allies or NATO member states and from the United States of America, as a member of parliament, as somebody who's close to the government circles, do you think the commitment is 100%? If there are going to be no troops that are going to be sent, is just weapons and ammo that NATO would send to Ukraine good enough? That's a serious question, because we are getting mixed signals coming from Washington, D.C. A few days ago, Biden spoke about ramifications. Today, Pentagon chief says that they're trying to work out a formula so that there is no conflict, which means that they're trying to not just allay fears, but also a reconciliatory note over here.
First of all, diplomacy should remain as well, because this is one of the means that we can continue dialogue and persuade all the world that we want peace and Ukrainians do not want war at all. The second point is that there are different signals from the United States, I think because of one reason. Our partners said that they will use all the package of harsh sanctions if Putin invades as a military invasion. But nowadays we see that was not usual military invasion, that was the hybrid invasion. We proclaim, we sign some agreements, we intervene with peacekeeping soldiers of Moscow Federation. We want to protect these so-called fake republics as people who have their own right to own country. Putin uses the mechanisms of democratic world to threaten that very democratic world. And I think that took some time for our Western partners to understand that this was actually the invasion. And we are really waiting for the speech of the President Biden, but we are already grateful to our European Union partners because they already agreed upon a package of the sanctions against Putin, his surrounding, all the members of Duma, but also sanctions against Moscow Federation military and Moscow Federation banks who are supporting the invasion into Ukraine. And also the European Union and Germany, they stopped the Nord Stream 2 process.
Sophia, continue to stay with me. Geeta, continue to stay with me. We're joined by another Member of Parliament from Ukraine, Maria Mezentseva. She's with us also from Kiev this evening. Maria, thank you very much for being with me. Your colleague in the Ukrainian Parliament, Sofia Fedina, is already with us. Maria, to you the same question. Your reactions, your assessment on what President Vladimir Putin said just a couple of hours ago.
Good evening to your TV channel. Good evening, Sophia. Sorry for me being on the route because it's a very hot time and we are going from one TV show to another one. My assessment is very simple. Putin is the kind of person who did not know what would be the plan B and C, even though he is very well known for building up plans before he acts. And we have seen it during the so-called live stream, which was not the live stream, during the Security Council meeting. And several of the members of the Security Council were speaking like they did not know the scenario. They were mixing up, getting the so-called republics of Lugansk and Donetsk people republics in the conglomerate with Russia Federation, even though that was not a topic. It was a topic of naming them so-called independent. So there should have been the next move, and the next move appeared to be a decision supported by the chamber of Russian parliament, saying that their troops can be deployed, more or less anywhere. And there are already jokes in the media whether they're going to go to those parts of other continents where there are Russians speaking to protect them. That was a very bright, let's say, fake story when they were invading eastern part of Ukraine, where I am coming from, that they were trying to protect Russian-speaking people who don't have to be protected. We are a country of multilingual culture. Yes, in the parliament we all speak Ukrainian, and Ukrainian is a state language, but there is English, German on the Ukrainian streets, and Russian language as well. So using the fake instruments like saying that Ukrainian army targeted the occupied territories or infrastructure objects, infrastructure units, that was absolute fake, which is already confirmed by international media. And we see that this provocation went out straight after. They didn't receive the reaction because Ukraine is committed to the ceasefire. Ukraine is committed to a peaceful resolution of this war, because this is in international language, in international armed conflict. But for Ukrainians, it's a real war. We would like to give an opportunity for the people who are staying in this occupied territories of this partially occupied territories of Donetsk and Lugansk regions in the east to come to the control. All Ukrainians, there are full rights as Ukrainian citizens.
But Maria, the question is, do you see the possibility of a peaceful resolution at this point of time? Do you see the possibility of that?
us as a parliament, and Ukrainian government, and also joined by the President Zelensky of Ukraine, we still call for a peaceful resolution until the full-scale invasion, which the whole world is talking about for another, well, since April last year. My intervention in the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly, which is uniting 47 member states, and back in April 21st, 2021, last year, was exactly about the 150,000 troops at our border at the side of the Russian Federation. So we do believe in a peaceful resolution. We called on the United Nations Security Council for an urgent meeting, which happened last night. Well, night in New York, and evening or I assume lunchtime, whatever, in India, Delhi. But we also today in the Parliament, Sophia, me, and other members with all the members from all the parties of Ukrainian parliament supported the statement, which is calling on extension of sanctions from our EU partners. And I agree with Sophia, there is a package which has been called upon the coming meeting on Thursday in Brussels at the top level. And of course, we are expecting Mr. Biden's address to receive more information. We salute the decision of the German government to block the certification of a 9.5 billion euros project of Nord Stream 2, which is not an economic project. It is a project of energy dependence, not only seen by Ukraine, but also it's a danger for the whole of the subcontinent of Europe.
Sophia, what are you expecting from President Biden's address? You know, we've been waiting on it. I think it's a slightly delayed. It could happen any moment now. What are your expectations? The general sense is that it is going to list out even more sanctions, which appears to be the only real weapon that the United States has against Russia at this point of time.
Actually, we are eager to hear about the full package of sanctions, and we are eager to hear about the air defense umbrella over Ukraine that could be spread by the NATO member countries, and that can be introduced by Mr. Biden. But actually, continuing what my colleague said, I would like to stress that we need to change the paradigm in which we see the situation. Many people say about the conflict and the possible war in between Moscow Federation and Ukraine today. But we have to remember that Moscow Federation invaded Ukraine in February 2014. They annexed Crimean Peninsula. They threatened people there. They put military bases on occupied territory of Crimea. Then they occupied the regions of Donetsk and Luhansk region. And they killed a lot of people there. They made a lot of refugees to seek for new homes. They are killing people right now. Unfortunately, in these few days, we already have wounded and murdered soldiers. And people are being terrorized now. And that lasts for 8 years. And while seeking sanctions and the resolution of the conflict right now, we have to remember that the Moscow Federation is the country that ruined the international security system that was established after the Second World War. It ruined it not today, but in 2014. And from that on, it was not really punished. It has no responsibility what it did. And actually, right now, Moscow Federation has a veto vote in the Security Council of United Nations. How dare the country that starts the war in Ukraine, in Georgia, Transnistria, Syria, how this country can have a veto vote? We have to raise this question. We have to raise a question, how this country dare to speak about human rights if it infringed all the possible human rights, and how it can speak in the Parliamentary Assembly of the OSCE, how it can speak in Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe while it's being a terrorist country. And I firmly support the ideas and the suggestions of some American congressmen where they want in their bill and resolutions where they want to officially name Moscow Federation a terrorist country. And then the countries who agree with that should put also inevitable package of sanctions and to stop cooperation with a country that is trying to ruin the democracy and peace in all the world.
Okay, Maria and Sophia, thank you very much for being with us here on India Today. We value your time. We hope you and your families stay safe during this difficult time. We will be tracking this story very, very closely. There's no mistake. India Today has reporters on the ground. We care very deeply about what happens to Ukraine, and we will continue to report this story very, very closely. I hope to bring you on to our coverage in the days and the weeks ahead as well. Thank you very much to both of those Ukrainian MPs who've joined us live. Lieutenant General Raj Kadian continues to be with me. Biden is going to be speaking any moment now. These are live pictures that are coming in from the White House. Let's just try and listen in.
2, 1, 2.
Okay, that's an audio check that's happening at the White House. Full signal go now for Biden, who's going to be speaking any moment now. Like I said, the shape of this speech is fully expected to be centered around the sanctions package that Biden is going to declare being imposed on Russia as a result of President Putin declaring the eastern part of Ukraine independent states. It's being interpreted as a hybrid invasion of sorts without actually sending in troops. By declaring them independent, he's basically invaded them. And President Biden using the only weapon that the United States has in its arsenal against Russia at this point of time, the Russian Federation, which is sanctions. That podium there is where President Biden will come in. Those are live pictures coming in from the White House. The Russian president has just spoken, and now the US president will be speaking. You've got a line, on the top banner of our coverage here, saying that this is a super cold war. That is no exaggeration, ladies and gentlemen. No exaggeration whatsoever. The big two Cold War rivals going head to head in another spectacular geopolitical clash. Let's hope it doesn't come to actual armed conflict, but the turbulence, the tension and the suspense is palpable. The world in many ways is holding its breath. Geeta Mohan, our Foreign Affairs editor, continues to be with me. Geeta, live pictures coming in from the White House. Biden expected in minutes from now.
Well, that's right. President Biden is going to come out and make the announcement. Most probably it has to do with the sanctions that the U.S. is going to slap against Russia. But if there is going to be any other action that U.S. is expecting, don't expect that kind of announcement from this podium, Shiv, because we've already heard the Pentagon chief. So the tone and tenor has already been set by the Pentagon chief as to what can be expected. They are looking at maybe negotiations going back to the table. We could expect another round of the Normandy format. Let's wait and see whether that's going to really take place. President Putin has really put his stand forth as to where he stands, what his plan of action is, and how he's going to move forward should Ukraine decide to join the NATO or even for that matter the European Union. But over here, what is important right now is to see to what extent the United States of America is going to go in the sanctions that they're going to slap against Russia. So we know that it is going to be economic in nature. If it is going to go in the realm of military and defense, then India certainly is going to be very careful and will have to monitor, or for that matter read the fine text of what this announcement would really mean for New Delhi and New Delhi's defense deals with Russia. But the larger picture over here is the crisis the ongoing crisis at the border between Ukraine and Russia. We do know that there have been shelling reported from both sides, from the Ukrainian side and from the Russian side. And the cost of all this, even a minor strife, Shiv, is going to be huge when it comes to the population and the people of the Donbas region. A region very rich when it comes to mineral resources, very rich when it comes to coal and gas. So a very significant and an important region and part of Ukraine, now a breakaway faction recognized only by Russia. So again, actions are not something that we can expect right away. Sanctions certainly are something that we will be expecting President Biden to come out with. But if there is going to be a warning or a threat, we'll have to wait and see what Kremlin's reaction is going to be to POTUS's announcement.
This is a long extended cat and mouse game that is playing out, very much in the Cold War template. In fact, you've had President Putin invoke the Cold War as well, talking about the unfairness of the many post-Cold War impositions, on Russia, and therefore the stage being set for, in many ways, a longer extended conflict. It may not be the kind of spectacular kinetic war that many people are perhaps expecting to see. There are lots of very irresponsible media channels, both in India and abroad, that are making it seem like, the war clouds, suggest that firing is going to break out any moment. But like we've been reporting here on India Today, and we only report the facts and with responsibility, because war is a unthinkable last option, especially when you have forces as powerful as the Russian Federation, NATO, the United States involved, is unthinkable, especially for a world that's still healing following the implosion of Afghanistan, still coming to terms with the geopolitical scars of what happened in Central Asia. Now you've got this situation between Ukraine and the Russian Federation. Live pictures coming in from the White House. This image itself very, very telling. We're all waiting. The world is waiting, for U.S. action. Many of the things that the United States has said over the last few weeks have been the subject of, hilarity and derision. People have said that, there have been some analysts who believe that Russia has led the West down the garden path to somehow strategically exhaust the United States and the West. But things have taken a turn in the last 3-4 hours, with President Putin talking military, talking about approval for military action, talking about missile ranges, talking about nuclear threats from NATO. So all of this is important. And you've just heard 2 Ukrainian MPs talk about not just the desperate need for that country to get more military hardware and armament, but also an air defense umbrella. They're actually talking about airspace protection by the NATO. Will that actually happen? Will that be a hugely escalatory gesture, which it most certainly will be interpreted as? All of these are variables at this point of time. President Biden is going to be walking up to that podium in just a couple of minutes from now, and the full strength of United States action, such as it is against the Russian Federation, will be known in just a few minutes from now. Those are live pictures coming in from the White House as we await it. As we wait for President Biden to speak, I just want to play out for you what the Russian President Vladimir Putin said just a couple of hours ago. The tone and tenor of this entire conflict has become exponentially more volatile on the back of President Putin late last night, India time, declaring the 2 eastern rebel states of Ukraine as independent, something that's being interpreted in Ukraine as a hybrid invasion without actually sending in troops. And 2, by answering questions to the Russian media right now, talking about approval for external military action. Let's listen into what President Putin just said.
Regarding using the armed forces abroad, well, of course, we signed the treaties yesterday, and in these treaties, with both Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic, there are articles saying about us providing those republics help, including military help. As long as there is an ongoing conflict, by this decision, we are making it clear that if necessary, we intend to stand by our obligations.
General Raj Kadyan continues to be with me. Apologies for coming to you a little late, sir. And thanks for being with us. General Kadyan, what do you think the President Joe Biden's speech is going to be about? Do you believe it's going to be only centered around sanctions, the only real weapon that the United States has at this point of time?
No, I think he might also use placatory words like de-escalate and sort the things out through talks and diplomatic channels. But that is only talk. He has only said that this is an invasion. Well, as per international law, this is an invasion because Ukraine was an independent country. But the invasion hasn't come suddenly. It has been building up for the number of weeks now. And Americans themselves have been even giving it a date by which the invasion will be launched. So it is not a surprise. You see, the reality of geopolitics is that every country has a sphere of influence. America has it, Russia is a strong country, they have it, China also has it. And it is the understanding of the Russian that in 90, when the Soviet Union broke up, an undertaking was given, may not be a treaty as such, to the Russians that NATO will not expand east of Germany. But over a period of time, they've been nibbling at the Russian sphere of influence. 7 erstwhile countries were members of the Warsaw, today as members of NATO. In addition, 3 countries, the Baltic countries, who are actually part of the Soviet Union, are also in the NATO. So 10 additional members have been taken out of what Russia considers is its sphere of influence.
Yeah.
Other than that, Ukraine, particularly being on the doorstep, is more dangerous. If they join NATO, then NATO weapons, their troops will be sitting on the border of Russia, which Putin doesn't want. In these 5-6 weeks, the Russians have been building up around 3 sides of Ukraine. Putin has been repeatedly asking that give us a legal guarantee that Ukraine will not be admitted into NATO. Biden has not given that. They have not given it. And then even yesterday when there was a talk that the two leaders might have a summit again, he puts a condition that I am willing to have a summit provided there is no invasion. So that is a non-starter. You are not admitting, you are not accepting that the Ukraine will not join NATO. And then also you are closing the other door. I can talk to you, but there will be no invasion. Then what is he going to talk about? You don't take him in NATO, don't have an invasion. I don't think Russia would have accepted it. Now, the other part, reality, if you look at future, assuming that Russia goes westward right up to Kiev and occupies Ukraine, which may be possible, they are strong. But remember, Ukraine has, other than Russia, the largest force in Europe, 250,000 soldiers. And if they take to irregular warfare with the help from the Western countries by way of ammunition and weapons and some kind of a air umbrella or some support, then it is going to be a massive business for Russia. It's not going to be easy to control that country. And from all accounts, the Ukrainians are fired by nationalism. They've been talking about it. So if that happens, then it is a quagmire. Russia will be in difficulty economically from the sanctions, and militarily they will be totally exhausted. They will be tired as a question of time. So that only time will tell whether Putin wants to go further west or will be happy with taking these two now republics, erstwhile the regions of Ukraine. Although if he just takes, he done that in Armenia also and all, so that might also satisfy him because he still gets a cushion of the nearly 2,000 long kilometers border of Ukraine with Russia. If he controls that border, so he still has a cushion. But other than that, I don't think Russia is going to back out now. The talk of course, India wants that there should be a peaceful solution because we are in a very tight situation. We have very good relations with America, with Russia and the European Union. So we don't know which side kind of to look and which side to support. So we are all saying, let's find a diplomatic solution, non-violent.
Let's see how it plays out. I mean, is it about each side trying to wear the other out, politically, diplomatically, strategically at this point of time? It's really, really interesting to see. Vladimir Putin has had his say. Now Joe Biden will be, pointing his comments directly at the Kremlin. So this is This is very, very tantalizing. There's a great deal of suspense. There are soaring tensions like we've heard from the ground in Ukraine, and these tensions are likely to escalate in the days to come. Whether it actually breaks out into a full-scale armed conflict is something that most people are still skeptical about, because the Pentagon chief has also spoken about, the imperative for a peaceful diplomatic solution. So has Ukraine. So has President Putin. To be fair, all sides are talking about a peaceful solution, but the muscle flexing is happening. President Putin has already drawn that red line very, very clearly as far as NATO is concerned. Ukraine is talking about a NATO, a NATO-executed air defense umbrella. Any of these things could become a major escalatory point in a situation that is already very, very volatile. Like I said, a special Air India flight with the first 242 Indians, nationals living, studying, working in Ukraine has just landed back in Delhi. Listen into some of those voices as we wait for Joe Biden to speak. Listen into Indians who've just arrived back from Ukraine.
पैनिकेबल सिचुएशन है और मैं एक ही चीज़ बोलूँगा कि जितना जल्दी हो सके एज ए स्टूडेंट आ जाना चाहिए, बाकी फिर ऑनलाइन अगर स्टडी चलती तो ठीक, वरना फिर फ्यूचर का तो
हाँ, एम्बेसी ने बोल दिया कि बच्चे वापस आ जाएं।
पढ़ाई कैसी होगी आपकी?
आगे की पढ़ाई ऑनलाइन हो सकती है हमारी, वो यूनिवर्सिटी पे डिपेंड करता है कि क्लासेस कब हमारी ऑफलाइन होंगी। अब जब सिचुएशन ठीक होगी तभी होंगे अब ऑफलाइन।
अभी थोड़ी सी सिचुएशन खराब है, अंदर का तो पता नहीं है क्योंकि 2-3 दिन से फ्लाइट में थे, तो और कुछ पता नहीं है।
Images coming in of passengers who've just arrived back, safely back in India, because the Indian government was very firm that it wants students and professionals working, studying in Ukraine to return to India if possible, unless it is absolutely necessary and imperative that they remain in Ukraine. Geeta, images of Indians coming back. The MEA, the government, have been very firm. The advisories have been very clear about Indians getting out.
Well, that's right. Very measured statements came in earlier on, Shiv. Let us take it step by step. One, Government of India has not really announced evacuation, which means all the chartered flights that are going, the additional flights, are all commercial flights, and these students have to pay for the tickets and are coming back at a time when they shouldn't be. Secondly, there was apprehension amongst quite a few students with regards to universities not going online. They're primarily medical students and a lot of engineering students as well. So medical students really required to be there for the offline classes, and if there are going to be no online classes, they were mulling whether if they should come or not. Thirdly, the travel advisories that were initially put up were about those nationals should return to India who do not really have to stay or have a reason to stay in Ukraine. The second advisory spoke about how Indian students should start planning on their return. Third advisory, important one, which came in yesterday, was about Indian students should leave Ukraine irrespective of whether their classes are going online or not. And that's the reason why this additional flight that has been sent has come with so many students. We do know that the number of registered students, the Indian Embassy had asked all Indian nationals to register. That number was rather low because they were apprehensive whether if they should really be coming home or not. But parents are worried. The situation is indeed tense. The cost is quite high to get the children back home, but they did make up for the money that was required to ensure that their children come back home safely. This is one of the first batches of a huge number of students returning home. They have been coming back for the past few days now, Shiv, but this is an Air India flight that has primarily brought back all Indian nationals, particularly students who are studying in universities across Ukraine. And let me tell you that Kharkiv, which is a border town, which is where our colleague Gaurav Sawant was, is a border town but has a huge concentration of Indian students, given the universities and colleges that are there, medical universities and engineering colleges. And that's where the parents who have their children studying there, they're worried and they want their students or their wards to really return home. And that's what's happening right now. So yeah, a lot of them relieved to reach home, many still in Ukraine. The ones who are in Kyiv are still not as worried as the ones who are coming back from border towns, Shiv. But it is a worrisome situation. And the Indian administration over here putting out these travel advisories way in advance to ensure that should things get bad, at least they will have lesser chaos and lesser people to handle if at all they have to evacuate Indian nationals out of Ukraine.
Okay, stay with me, Geeta. Let's just listen into India Today's Gaurav Sawant, who's spoken to many of these students who'd left from Ukraine earlier today. He spoke to them before their flight. Listen in.
We are at the Borispol International Airport and a number of Indian students are now heading back to the country. With me are two students of medical. Tell me your name. What college are you in?
We are in Bogomolets National Medical University and my name is Niveta.
What's your name?
Lakshmi.
Why are both of you heading back to India?
Because of our classes of online, so we are back to India.
Okay, so no more classes being held offline now?
No, it's online, all.
Now, is this because of the rising tension in Ukraine?
Yeah, of course.
Are you scared because of this tension?
No, not much. We are not affected by this situation, but still we thought of going back because it's online.
Have your parents also asked you to come? Were your parents very worried?
Yeah, probably my parents asked me to come because of that issue. Everybody is fear of that, so they asked me to come.
Have your parents also asked you to come back to India?
Yeah, of course.
And is there a lot of panic amongst Indian children here? Do they all want to head back? Are all flights that are going back packed? Have prices gone up?
Yeah, probably the prices are double the rate. If we book one way, it is double the rate. If we book return also, but it is okay. And then we are not afraid that much, but our parents are thinking like it is too like afraid in here. So we are back to India.
But would you rather stay here? What are your local friends telling you? What are Ukrainian friends telling you?
Like, they are not afraid. They have to stay here, right? So the situation is normal actually inside here.
Okay. So I know you're getting late to check in. I wish you all the best. All the best. Fly safe. So a large number of Indian students have arrived here. Some are taking this Air India flight. Others are taking other commercial flights. But their aim is to leave Ukraine as quickly as possible as tension mounts. Is there a lot of panic amongst Indian children here? Do they all want to head back? Are all flights that are going back packed? Have prices gone up?
Yeah, probably the prices are double the rate. If we book one way, it is double the rate. If we book return also, but it is okay. And then we are not afraid that much, but our parents are thinking like it is too like afraid in here. So we are back to India.
But would you rather stay here? What are your local friends telling you? What are Ukrainian friends telling you?
Like, they are not afraid. They have to stay here, right? So the situation is normal actually inside here.
टिकट क्या नॉर्मल रेट पे खरीद रहे हो या ज्यादा महंगे खरीद रहे हो?
एक्सपेंसिव है सर.
डबल रेट हो गया टिकट.
डबल रेट. 25 की टिकट 54, 60 ऐसे मिल रही है.
90,000 तक का टिकट पहुंच गए. 95,000 का.
यस सर.
किसने खरीदा 95,000?
हमारे साथ के हैं सर.
प्रज्ञा, why are you heading back?
Because of the situation, our parents are worried, so they're calling us back.
Are the tickets the same price or have you had to pay much more?
Like those who have booked the tickets before, they will have the tickets like at very low cost, and now the tickets are very high, so they are giving us the like chartered flights.
Okay, we've got some breaking news coming in now. Late breaking news coming in now. The Ukrainian army says that 1 soldier has been killed and 6 wounded in the war-torn eastern part of rebel-held Ukraine. This as the Russian president has held talks with the president of Azerbaijan at this point of time. 6 soldiers injured in the east, says Ukraine. 1 soldier has been killed in the restive east. That's the rebel-held east. at this point of time. So things, as you can see, definitely escalating slowly and slowly. Whether it is facts, whether it is rhetoric. Okay, President Biden is speaking. Let's cut across and listen in live.
Well, good afternoon. Yesterday, Vladimir Putin recognized 2 regions of Ukraine as independent states. And he bizarrely asserted that these regions are no longer part of Ukraine and their sovereign territory. To put it simply, Russia just announced that it is carving out a big chunk of Ukraine. Last night, Putin authorized Russian forces to deploy into these regions. Today, he asserted that these regions are actually extend deeper than the 2 areas he recognized, claiming large areas currently under the jurisdiction of the Ukrainian government. He's setting up a rationale to take more territory by force, in my view. And if we listened to his speech last night, and many of you did, I know, he's setting up a rationale to go much further. This is the beginning of a Russian invasion of Ukraine, as he indicated and asked permission to be able to do from his Duma. So let's begin to, I'm going to begin to impose sanctions in response far beyond the steps we and our allies and partners implemented in 2014. And if Russia goes further with this invasion, we stand prepared to go further as with sanctions. Who in the Lord's name does Putin think gives him the right to declare new so-called countries on territory that belong to his neighbors? This is a flagrant violation of international law and it demands a firm response from the international community. Over the last few months, we've coordinated closely with our NATO allies and partners in Europe and around the world to prepare that response. We've said all along, and I've told Putin to his face more than a month ago, that we would act together. And the moment Russia moved against Ukraine, Russia has now undeniably moved against Ukraine by declaring these independent states. So today, I'm announcing the first tranche of sanctions to impose costs on Russia in response to their actions yesterday. These have been closely coordinated with our allies and partners and will continue to escalate sanctions if Russia escalates. We're implementing full blocking sanctions on 2 large Russian financial institutions, VEB and their military bank. We're implementing comprehensive sanctions on Russia's sovereign debt. That means we've cut off Russia's government from Western financing. It can no longer raise money from the West and cannot trade in its new debt on our markets or European markets either. Starting tomorrow and continuing in the days ahead, we'll also impose sanctions on Russia's elites and their family members. They share in the corrupt gains of the Kremlin policies and should share in the pain as well. And because of Russia's actions, we've worked with Germany to ensure Nord Stream 2 will not, as I promised, will not move forward. As Russia contemplates its next move, we have our next move prepared as well. Russia will pay an even steeper price if it continues its aggression, including additional sanctions. The United States will continue to provide defensive assistance to Ukraine in the meantime, and will continue to reinforce and reassure our NATO allies. Today, in response to Russia's admission that it will not withdraw its forces from Belarus, I have authorized additional movements of U.S. forces and equipment already stationed in Europe to strengthen our Baltic allies, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Let me be clear, these are totally defensive moves on our part. We have no intention of fighting Russia. We want to send an unmistakable message, though, that the United States, together with our allies, will defend every inch of NATO territory and abide by the commitments we made to NATO. We still believe that Russia is poised to go much further in launching a massive military attack against Ukraine. Hope I'm wrong about that. Hope we're wrong about that. But Russia has only escalated its threat against the rest of Ukrainian territory, including major cities and including the capital city of Kyiv. There are still well over 150,000 Russian troops surrounding Ukraine. And as I said, Russian forces remain positioned in Belarus to attack Ukraine from the north, including warplanes and offensive missile systems. Russia's moved troops closer to Ukraine's border with Russia. Russia's naval vessels are maneuvering in the Black Sea to Ukraine's south, including amphibious assault ships, missile cruisers, and submarines. Russia's moved supplies of blood and medical equipment into position on their border. You don't need blood unless you plan on starting a war. Over the last few days, we've seen much of the playbook that Secretary Blinken laid out last week in the United Nations Security Council come to pass. A major increase in military provocations and false flag events along the line of contact in the Donbass. Dramatically staged, conveniently on-camera meeting of Putin's Security Council to grandstand for the Russian public. And now, political provocation of recognizing sovereign Ukrainian territory as so-called independent republics in clear violation, again, of international law. President Putin has sought authorization from the Russian parliament to use military force outside of Russian territory. And this set further pretext of further provocations by Russia to try to justify further military action. None of us should be fooled. None of us will be fooled. There is no justification. Further Russian assault in Ukraine remains a severe threat in the days ahead. And if Russia proceeds, it is Russia and Russia alone that bears the responsibility. As we respond, my administration is using every tool at our disposal to protect American businesses and consumers from rising prices at the pump. As I said last week, defending freedom will have cost for us as well and here at home. We need to be honest about that. But as we do this, I'm going to take robust action to make sure the pain of our sanctions is targeted at the Russian economy, not ours. We're closely monitoring energy supplies for any disruption. We're executing a plan in coordination with major oil-producing consumers and producers toward a collective investment to secure stability in global energy supplies. This will blunt gas prices. I want to limit the pain the American people are feeling at the gas pump. This is critical to me. In the last few days, I've been in constant contact with European leaders, including with Ukrainian President Zelensky. Vice President Harris met in person with the leaders in Germany over the weekend at the Munich conference, including President Zelensky. At every step, we have shown the United States and our allies and partners are working in unison, which he hasn't been counting on, Mr. Putin. We're united in our support of Ukraine. We are united in our opposition to Russian aggression. And we're united in our resolve to defend our NATO alliance. And we're united in our understanding of the urgency and seriousness of the threat Russia is making to global peace and stability. Yesterday, the world heard clearly the full extent of Vladimir Putin's twisted rewrite of history, going back more than a century, as he waxed eloquently, noting that, well, I'm not going to go into it, but nothing in Putin's lengthy remarks indicate any interest in pursuing real dialogue on European security in the year 2022. He directly attacked Ukraine's right to exist. He indirectly threatened territory formerly held by Russia, including nations that today are thriving democracies and members of NATO. He explicitly threatened war unless his extreme demands were met. And there's no question that Russia is the aggressor. So we're clear-eyed about the challenges we're facing. Nonetheless, there is still time to avert the worst-case scenario that will bring untold suffering to millions of people if they move as suggested. The United States and our allies and partners remain open to diplomacy if it is serious. When all is said and done, we're going to judge Russia by its actions, not its words. And whatever Russia does next, we're ready to respond with unity, clarity, and conviction. We'll probably have more to say about this as it moves on. I'm hoping diplomacy is still available. Thank you all very much.
Are you still open?
President Joe Biden playing it on the line and saying that Russia will be responsible for whatever happens next if it does not choose a diplomatic solution to the current crisis and de-escalate at this point of time from the borders of Ukraine. President Biden also announcing sanctions on 2 Russian banks, as well as complete sanctions and the removal of the possibility of the Russian government raising finance from the West at this point of time. He also says that if Russia escalates further, there will be even more sanction packages that will be announced. This sanction packages is the latest in a series of sanctions that have been announced on Russia. India Today had told you that this speech was going to be basically and majorly about sanctions, and that is precisely how it has played out. Joe Biden responding to Vladimir Putin and his deeming the eastern part of Ukraine as independent, being seen as a hybrid invasion and being interpreted, as we told you, as an escalatory and belligerent move by the Russian Federation. President Biden putting the ball back in Russia's court, saying we'll defend every inch of NATO territory. Remember, Ukraine is seen as an aspiring member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and that goes to the very heart of this current standoff. President Biden putting Russia on notice once again and saying that the full force of United States economic and sanction action will be applied on Russia. Let's listen in once again to the highlights of a speech that's going to be sending shockwaves across this
new so-called countries. Yesterday, Vladimir Putin recognized 2 regions of Ukraine as independent states. And he bizarrely asserted that these regions are no longer part of Ukraine and their sovereign territory. To put it simply, Russia just announced that it is carving out a big chunk of Ukraine. Last night, Putin authorized Russian forces to deploy into these regions. Today, he asserted that these regions are actually extend deeper than the 2 areas he recognized, claiming large areas currently under the jurisdiction of the Ukrainian government. He's setting up a rationale to take more territory by force, in my view. And if we listened to his speech last night, and many of you did, I know, he's setting up a rationale to go much further. This is the beginning of a Russian invasion of Ukraine, as he indicated and asked permission to be able to do from his Duma. So I'm going to begin to impose sanctions in response far beyond the steps we and our allies and partners implemented in 2014. And if Russia goes further with this invasion, we stand prepared to go further as with sanctions.
It's going to be a big day on the Ukrainian front tomorrow. The shockwaves of what Joe Biden has just said, will gladden the hearts of the Ukrainians, but they're expecting much more support, weapons and ammunition from the West, from the United States and the other Western nations that have massed behind Ukraine and NATO against the Russian Federation. The belligerence, the volatility of the situation has just gone through the roof. Will there be a shooting war? Will there be a longer, more sustained conflict on the borders? Will there be troops on the ground? The next few days, the next few weeks will tell. Right now, Russia has been put on notice, and Russia has put the West on notice. We're wrapping our coverage on this. We told you we'd bring you Joe Biden's speech live, and we've done that. We end this broadcast at this point of time. The news continues. Thanks very much for watching.